The day started like any other Tuesday, except for the constant drip, drip, drip coming from my bathroom ceiling. I'm Alex, by the way. Alex Chin, 32, graphic designer, and completely useless when it comes to anything involving tools or home repairs. The leak had started as a small water stain 2 days ago, but overnight it had evolved into something more sinister, a persistent drip that echoed through my otherwise quiet apartment. I'd placed a cooking pot underneath to catch the water, but the hollow pinging sound was slowly driving me insane. I tried to ignore it, focus on my work, but each drop felt like it was falling directly onto my last nerve. You know how some problems you can just put off indefinitely? This wasn't one of those. The water stain was growing, spreading across my ceiling like some kind of slow-motion horror movie effect. I've been living in this apartment for 3 years, and it was the first place that truly felt like home after my breakup with Ethan. We'd been together for 6 years, and when it ended, I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone else get close enough to hurt me like that again. So here I was, single, self-sufficient, and staring helplessly at a leak that was beyond my capabilities to fix. I scrolled through my phone, looking at local plumbers. There were so many options, all with varying reviews and price points. I finally settled on Reliable Repairs. They had good reviews and claimed they could come out the same day for emergencies. Was this an emergency? The growing puddle on my bathroom floor seemed to think so. I made the call, and a friendly voice on the other end assured me someone would be at my place within the hour. I hung up and looked around my apartment, suddenly aware of the coffee cups scattered around my workspace, the laundry I'd meant to fold days ago, and the general disarray that comes from working from home and living alone. Let me explain why this matters. When you're not expecting visitors, especially professional ones who might judge your living situation, there's this sudden panic that sets in. It's like your home becomes a reflection of your life choices, and in that moment, I wasn't sure I wanted anyone seeing mine. I rushed around, throwing dirty clothes into my bedroom, washing dishes at lightning speed, and trying to make my place look like it belonged to a functioning adult rather than someone who occasionally ate cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row. The doorbell rang exactly 47 minutes after my call. I took a deep breath, ran my fingers through my hair in a futile attempt to look presentable, and opened the door. And that's when everything changed. Standing there was not the middle-aged, overall-wearing plumber I had expected. Instead, there was Jamie, tall, with warm brown eyes, dark curly hair pulled back in a small ponytail, and a smile that immediately made me forget about the leak, my messy apartment, and possibly my own name. "Hi, I'm Jamie from Reliable Repairs. You called about a leak." His voice was deep but gentle, with a slight accent I couldn't quite place. He extended his hand, and I realized I'd been staring. "Yes, sorry. I'm Alex. The leak's in the bathroom. It's coming from the ceiling." I stepped back to let him in, suddenly very aware of my faded Star Wars t-shirt and sweatpants. Professional impression, 0. Jamie followed me to the bathroom, his toolbox in hand. He looked up at the ceiling, then at the pot I'd placed on the floor. "How long has it been leaking?" "I noticed the stain 2 days ago, but the dripping just started last night," I explained, watching as he assessed the situation with a focused expression that made me wonder what else those eyes noticed. "Mind if I check upstairs?" "Probably a pipe issue from your neighbor." He glanced at me, and I nodded, trying not to stare at the way his uniform shirt fit perfectly across his shoulders. While Jamie went to speak with my upstairs neighbor, I tried to compose myself. It was ridiculous to feel this flustered over a plumber, no matter how attractive. I was a grown adult who had sworn off relationships after Ethan had left me for his personal trainer. The last thing I needed was to develop a crush on someone who was literally paid to be in my home. Jamie returned 15 minutes later. "Good news and bad news," he said, setting his toolbox down. "Good news is I found the source. Your upstairs neighbor's shower has a crack in the base that's leaking through. Bad news is we need to open up part of your ceiling to fix the pipe properly and prevent mold." My heart sank. How bad is it going to be? I won't lie to you. It's going to make a mess. But I'll be as careful as possible, and I'll clean everything up when I'm done. He gave me a reassuring smile that somehow made the prospect of having my ceiling torn open seem less catastrophic. "Do you need to do it now? Today?" I asked, mentally calculating how this would affect my deadline for the branding project I was working on. The sooner the better. Water damage only gets worse, and mold can start growing within 24 to 48 hours. Jamie's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I have all the materials I need in my truck. It'll take a few hours, but I can get it done today if that works for you." I nodded, resigned to my fate. "I guess I'll clear out so you have space to work." "You don't have to leave," Jamie said quickly. I mean, unless you want to. But I'm used to working around people. Just might get a bit noisy. There was something in the way he said it that made me want to stay. I'll work in the living room then. Just let me know if you need anything. As Jamie set up his equipment, I couldn't help but notice how methodical he was. He laid down protective sheets, organized his tools, and moved with an efficiency that spoke of years of experience. It was oddly fascinating watching someone who knew exactly what they were doing, especially when my own work often involved hours of staring at a screen waiting for inspiration. So, graphic designer? Jamie called out, noticing the artwork on my walls as he passed through the living room with some equipment. I looked up from my laptop, surprised. How did you know? He gestured toward my workspace. The tablet, the color swatches, and the way you've arranged your space. My sister's a designer too. She's always talking about negative space and color theory. It's a dead giveaway, huh? I smiled, oddly pleased he'd noticed. What about you? Always wanted to be a plumber. Jamie laughed, a warm sound that seemed to fill the room. Not exactly. I was pre-med in college, actually. Life took a different turn. From medicine to plumbing? That's quite a change. I couldn't hide my curiosity. Family business, he explained, adjusting something in his toolbox. My dad got sick my junior year. He built this company from nothing, and there was no one else to take over. I stepped in temporarily, and then... He shrugged. Turns out I'm pretty good at fixing things, and I like the freedom. Every day is different. There was something so genuine about the way he spoke that made me want to know more. But before I could ask another question, he disappeared back into the bathroom, and the sound of tools being used reminded me of why he was here in the first place. For the next hour, I tried to focus on my work while the sounds of Jamie's repairs created an unusual soundtrack to my day. Occasionally, he'd call out a question or comment, and we'd have brief exchanges that felt surprisingly comfortable. I learned he had 2 sisters, loved Thai food, and had a golden retriever named Einstein. I found myself sharing bits of my own life too. My passion for typography, my weekly video calls with my parents in Seattle, my failed attempts at keeping houseplants alive. The easy conversation made the time pass quickly, and I was almost disappointed when Jamie announced he needed to cut into the ceiling. This is going to get messy and loud, he warned. Might want to put on some headphones. I nodded and slipped on my noise-canceling headphones, but I couldn't help glancing toward the bathroom every few minutes. There was something captivating about watching someone work with their hands, solving tangible problems with practical solutions. My work was all digital, pixels and vectors that existed only on screens. Jamie was dealing with the physical world, making real, immediate changes. About 20 minutes later, a loud crash followed by a startled yell made me jump up from my chair. I rushed to the bathroom to find Jamie soaking wet, standing under what appeared to be a small waterfall coming from my ceiling. The pipe had apparently burst completely when he was working on it. Are you okay? I asked, alarmed by the amount of water pouring down. Fine, just surprised, he sputtered, wiping water from his face. Can you turn off the main water valve? It should be near your water heater. I ran to do as he asked, finding the valve and turning it until the water stopped. When I returned to the bathroom, the scene was even worse than I'd imagined. Water covered the floor, Jamie was drenched, and there was now a gaping hole in my ceiling. I am so sorry about this, Jamie said, looking genuinely distressed. The pipe was more corroded than I thought. When I tried to patch it, the whole section gave way. I should have been upset. This was exactly the kind of disaster I'd feared. But looking at Jamie, his hair plastered to his forehead, his uniform soaked through, and that genuinely apologetic expression, I couldn't find it in me to be angry. Instead, I found myself laughing. Is this funny? Jamie asked, looking confused but relieved I wasn't yelling. It's either laugh or cry, I admitted. And you look like a drowned puppy. A slow smile spread across his face, and then he was laughing too. We stood there, in my flooded bathroom, laughing like we'd known each other for years instead of hours. It was the kind of moment that shouldn't have felt intimate but somehow did. Let me get you a towel, I said when our laughter subsided. And maybe some dry clothes? I think I have sweatpants that might fit you. Jamie hesitated. You don't have to do that. You can't work in soaked clothes. It's the least I can do since you're literally standing in a puddle trying to fix my ceiling. He nodded gratefully, and I went to find him some clothes. When I returned with a towel and my largest sweatpants and t-shirt, Jamie had already started cleaning up the water with the protective sheets he'd brought. Bathroom's all yours, I said, handing him the clothes. I'll start mopping up out here. While Jamie changed, I tried to soak up some of the water that had spread into the hallway. The situation was objectively terrible. My bathroom ceiling had a hole in it, Water had potentially damaged my floors, and this repair was clearly going to be more extensive than I'd initially thought. Yet, strangely, I wasn't as upset as I should have been. Jamie emerged from the bathroom looking completely different in my clothes. The sweatpants were a bit short on him, and my Michigan State T-shirt stretched across his shoulders in a way mine never did. He tied his wet hair back again, and there was something so disarmingly casual about seeing him in my clothes that I had to look away. "Thank you for these," he said, gesturing to the clothes. "I've called my colleague to bring some replacement pipes and extra equipment. He should be here in about 30 minutes. In the meantime, I can get this water cleaned up." "I'll help," I offered, already grabbing extra towels from the linen closet. We worked side by side, soaking up water and wringing out towels. The task should have been miserable, but there was something almost companionable about it. As we worked, Jamie told me about other plumbing disasters he'd encountered, the time he found a family of mice living in someone's walls, the elderly woman who insisted her pipes were making music at night. They were. The bachelor party that resulted in a toilet being completely removed from its foundation. "You must see people at their worst," I commented as we finished drying the floor. "No one calls a plumber when they're having a good day." Jamie considered this, leaning against the wall. "True, but you also see people as they really are. In their homes, dealing with unexpected problems. You learn a lot about someone by how they handle a crisis." "And how am I doing?" I asked, suddenly curious about his assessment. His eyes met mine, warm and appreciative. "Better than most." "You laughed instead of yelled. Offered me dry clothes instead of demanding to speak to my manager. I'd say you're handling this like a champ." There was genuine admiration in his voice that made me feel unexpectedly seen. Not just physically, though the way his eyes lingered on mine suggested he noticed that too, but seen as a person. It had been a long time since I'd felt that kind of connection with someone new. The moment was interrupted by a knock at the door, Jamie's colleague arriving with the supplies. For the next couple of hours, I tried to work while they fixed the pipe and patched the ceiling. But I found myself distracted, not by the noise, but by the occasional glimpses of Jamie working, the sound of his voice as he explained something to his coworker, the way he'd catch my eye and smile when he passed through the living room. By late afternoon, the immediate crisis had been resolved. The pipe was fixed, the ceiling had a temporary patch that would need proper finishing later, and most of the water had been cleaned up. Jamie's colleague left with the wet protective sheets and debris, leaving Jamie to finish the final cleanup. "So, what's the damage?" I asked, referring to both my ceiling and my wallet. Jamie put down his clipboard. "The pipe repair is covered under your building's insurance since it was a structural issue. You'll need a drywall specialist to properly finish the ceiling, but I can recommend someone good who won't overcharge you. As for today's emergency call and labor..." He hesitated. "Please don't say you're not charging me because you feel bad about the flood," I said, recognizing the look on his face. "That wasn't your fault." "I'm not saying that," he replied with a small smile. "But I am giving you our emergency service discount, which we usually reserve for regular customers." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that even a real thing?" "It is now," Jamie admitted with a laugh. "Look, you made what could have been a really unpleasant job into something not unpleasant. Consider it a thank you for the dry clothes and good company." There was something in his voice, a hint of reluctance that suggested he wasn't ready to leave yet. Or maybe I was projecting because I wasn't ready for him to go. "The clothes," I remembered suddenly. "You're still wearing my clothes. Your uniform must still be soaked, right?" Jamie looked down as if just remembering. "I should probably change back before I leave." Or, I heard myself saying before I could overthink it, "You could return them another time. Maybe over coffee? As a thank you for fixing my ceiling." The moment the words left my mouth, I felt a rush of anxiety. Was I really asking out the plumber? Had I misread the entire situation? But then Jamie smiled, and it was like the sun coming out after a storm. "I'd like that," he said. "Though technically, I should be thanking you for being so understanding about the flood. We could thank each other over dinner instead," I suggested, feeling bolder now. "I know a great Thai place around the corner." Jamie's smile widened. "I thought you'd never ask. Let me just finish up this paperwork, and I'm all yours." As he filled out the final forms, I had a moment of clarity. The day had started with a leak, an unwanted intrusion of water that threatened to damage my carefully constructed life. And in trying to fix that leak, I'd ended up flooded, not just with water, but with feelings I hadn't allowed myself to experience in years. Interest, attraction, connection. The very things I'd been so careful to avoid since Ethan. Jamie handed me the paperwork to sign, our fingers brushing in a way that couldn't be accidental. "So, About that dinner, he said, his voice softer now that we were standing closer. Is tonight too soon? I looked up at him, this stranger who had somehow turned a home repair disaster into one of the most unexpectedly enjoyable days I'd had in months. Tonight sounds perfect, I replied, surprising myself with how much I meant it. As we walked out of my apartment together, leaving behind the patched ceiling and the memory of the flood, I couldn't help but think about how sometimes the things we try hardest to contain, whether water or emotions, find a way to break through anyway. And sometimes, when the dam breaks, what floods in isn't destruction, but possibility. That was 3 years ago. Jamie and I still laugh about our unconventional first meeting, especially when our friends ask how we met. The leak that brought us together has long since been properly repaired, but we keep the small dent in the ceiling as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the most unexpected intrusions into our carefully ordered lives, the leaks, the floods, the plumbers and ponytails, are exactly what we need to wash away our defenses and reveal what's been waiting underneath all along. And yes, Jamie did eventually return my sweatpants and t-shirt, though these days, our clothes are so mixed together in our shared closet that it's hard to remember what belonged to whom in the first place. Kind of like our lives. What started as a simple repair job somehow fixed something in both of us that we didn't even know was broken. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd called a different plumbing company that day, or if Jamie had been assigned to a different job. But then he'll catch me staring at the ceiling patch and know exactly what I'm thinking. No use wondering about the pipes not taken, he'll say with that same warm smile that first made me forget about the leak. And he's right. Some connections are just meant to happen, even if they start with a flood. Total_char_count. 18,824.